TJ Higgins is president and founder of Sun-Fire Nurseries in Sarasota, Florida. Through a close partnership with Suntory Flowers, he's helped make Sun Parasol the #1 branded Mandevilla in North America. Delilah Onofrey supports Suntory Flowers' marketing efforts in North America. Prior to joining the Suntory team, she was editor of Greenhouse Grower magazine. So let's get started with the webinar. Delilah?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Well, it's great. Here we are in the peak of summer when Sun Parasols in their full glory all over the world. And it's true that, before Sun Parasol was on the market 10 years ago, Mandevilla was a very narrow niche crop, just more for tropicals, nursery, and now it's a major category everywhere. And it is because of the superior performance, the breakthrough colors, more flower power than ever before. And, as a testament to its success, you can find Sun Parasol at most garden retailers, whether it's independent garden centers, box stores, and even at many grocery stores. And TJ, as our lead ambassador grower, you've been here the entire time. And what do you have to say about what Sun Parasol has become in the market for this category?
Well, it really has changed it because of the color, mostly the first red Dipladenia, true red, and the first red Mandevilla. It's been a big change. When I first started down in South Florida, you would see fields and fields of hibiscus and then a little section of Alice DuPont Mandevilla. Now you see fields and fields of Sun Parasol and less hibiscus.
Yeah, and then even just the scope of Suntory's breeding in this category is just amazing, and every new variety that comes out, very significant improvement, and so the new ones you see now are even better. And so to get an idea for our audience, exactly which types of Sun Parasol you're growing, we have an audience poll right now where you can vote, and you can choose more than one if you're growing more than one type. We just would like to get an idea, just exactly, who we're talking to today, how well versed you are in the different types. So after we cover some general production information, we're going to go into the distinct differences of each group and the benefits they have to offer. So we'll give some people some time to vote, and then we'll go into the production presentation, and then after the production presentation, we'll share the results and then go into each type. Okay, so let's start with some general production tips. And so TJ, what can you tell us about the watering needs of Sun Parasol in general? So TJ, on the production tips for watering.
Oh, I had myself muted. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say
okay.
When customers send me photos, the biggest thing I see is yellowing leaves, and a lot of people think right away, oh, this is disease. I got disease problems, and usually it's just that they're watering too often. The biggest thing with Sun Parasol is to plant it in a well-draining soil. If you have it in a hanging basket, make sure that you don't have a saucer that holds any water on the bottom, and let them dry out almost completely, almost to the wilting point in between watering. If you keep it wet all the time, you're going to have yellowing leaves, and it could be the start of disease. But if you can run it on the dry side, you're going to be much better off. And also water in the morning. If you send your Mandevilla into the night with wet foliage on a consistent basis, you're going to see a lot of leaf spot. So those are two simple things that can make a huge difference in production.
Okay, so then the next is light and heat.
Yes, and we all probably wish we had more of it most of the time. But there's two factors when Mandevilla grow. You could put all the heat on the world on them if you want, but if you have no light, they're not going to be growing. So if you're a northern grower, you really need to be careful of the water in the wintertime. If you've had a week straight of cloudy days, you probably only watered one time that week. You need the light along with the heat. Just giving them heat's not going to be enough. The flowering also depends on the day length. So it depends variety per variety. We'll go over that later. but you're going to need certain day lengths to initialize flowering.
And I think I recall you saying how light can also influence the vining or not, like more light, less vining. Is that correct? Or?
Yeah. Well, the higher the intensity of the light. If you're growing outside in South Florida, it's going to keep them much more compact. If you're out in California growing and you have the cool nights, you're actually going to see more vining. And if you were to take that same plant and put it in a shade house in South Florida, you're going to see more vining and longer distance in between the internodes.
Okay. And then, so the next one is fertilizer. What are the fertilizer requirements for Sun Parasol?
Well, I know a lot of people do liquid feed. So if you're going to use liquid feed, you feed every other day at 250 parts per million. Even if you're doing liquid feed, we still recommend doing a slow-release fertilizer around the edge of the pot, but only at a quarter of the recommended rate. And also don't put the granules right next to the stem. You will see some burn if you put it too close to the plant. But we prefer just slow-release fertilizer, like a 90, 120, 180 day fertilizer, and then you can lay off the lay off the liquid.
Okay, and then our last area is pests and diseases to monitor and watch for.
Well, anybody that grows them knows mites love them, and that's the prime pest. And if you wait until you see an outbreak, you're probably going to have a hard time getting it under control. The best way is to take preventative measures. If anybody ever has any questions about what to spray, they should call the grower they got them from, call the propagator, and see what they've used on them already, because you're going to want to come at them from many different angles. You know, for me to sit here and list a couple of chemicals really doesn't make sense, because you're going to have to use a little bit of everything as you go. Beneficials also work very well on Mandevilla. We have, depending on your setup and what kind of house you have and how much you can control it, but if you have a controlled environment, beneficials work really well. So, and the other thing with the disease, the airflow makes all the difference. This goes back to watering in the morning, but if you can keep a good airflow around the plants, the biggest disease problem as far as foliar issues is going to be leaf spot. That's where Suntory made huge strides. They're much better than the old Alice DuPont. They're much more disease resistant, but still they're Mandevilla. They can be tough, and you want to give them the best chance you can.
Yeah, I recall just with the various introductions and how important the leaves are in the breeding, whether they have hairy leaves or not, that'll influence insects and diseases, things that you don't even think about that make a difference.
Yeah, when you have something like the Alice DuPont, that's a real wavy leaf, and even more than the waves, the hairs on the leaf, it just leaves mites more places to lay their eggs and to populate.
Okay, well that wraps up the production part, the general best practices for the entire Sun Parasol category, regardless of the series. And now let's turn to the poll results to see what varieties are you growing. And I see the giant varieties very popular, 60%, original 50%, and pretty 40%. And then a third garden crimson. So it's good. I'm happy to see everybody's growing more than one type.
Yeah, and the giant varieties are probably winning this poll, because there is no other true red Mandevilla on the market besides in Sun Parasol. There are some other categories that other breeders have came on with some similar plants, but the giant varieties and the pretty varieties, Suntory is still the only ones with those unique varieties.
Yeah, and the latest giants, the Red Emperor, which is like the next generation of giant crimson, right?
Yeah, that one's the best one in the series yet. The deep color of the flower, and the big difference between it and the current giant crimson is the flower doesn't fade. The old giant crimson, when it got really, really hot, it would not be as deep of a red, where this holds its color no matter how hot it gets.
Okay, so now that we've identified the key groups, let's go into the details about the descriptions, what makes them different, and then the best uses for each. So the first group is the original group that started it all.
Yeah, and I would tell anybody, if you have never grown them and you want to try something, the originals are the best way to go. They're the toughest, most disease-resistant of the group. This is a true Dipladenia. It's going to stay compact, more compact in Florida than other parts of the U.S. Even in California, this one will get more tendrils. But again, what makes it a Dipladenia and not a Mandevilla is that those tendrils will not grab on and wrap themselves. If you did take an original group and put it on a trellis, you're going to be training it or tying it off to the trellis. It does have the widest range of colors. You have red, or you have crimson, deep red, cream pink, stars and stripes, deep or pink, burgundy. So you have a wide range of colors, and it's very easy to grow. Gets covered in flowers.
Okay, and then as far as, let's see, the best uses, trying to advance the slide here.
While you're doing that, the best uses for the originals, again, out in California where they get the cooler nights and you get much more vines, there's a lot of people that grow these on a trellis, and it works just fine out there. For much of the country, it would be much better to go with a pretty or a giant if you want a trellis plant. These work great as like a 6-inch to a 12-inch pot, and then they also work great for hanging baskets. They work well planted in the landscape or as a patio container.
Yeah, I know, what was it, 2 years ago when we did that ultimate beach house in the panhandle of Florida with coastal living, they really look gorgeous in the beds of that home.
Yeah, they get so many flowers on them. They stand out wherever they're at.
Okay, so now we are on to the giant group.
The giant group. These are your true Mandevilla. When people say Mandevilla, the giants is what they think and what they expect. They want that large leaf, and they want that large 4 to 5-inch flower. These are best for trellises. They'll climb as high as you give them something to climb on. So they're best grown in larger pots. People can grow them in a 6-inch on a trellis, but really the pretties kind of fit that size of pot a little better. They can also be done as hanging baskets. A lot of people do them as hanging baskets, but there will be a little more pinching to keep it off your hangers. It will want to climb up your hangers.
Okay, so now on to the pretty group, the other choice for trellis.
Yeah, and this is the most unique because this has Dipladenia characteristics but Mandevilla growth habits. You have the smaller leaf, you have the smaller flower, and again, they get covered in flowers. But these are natural climbers. They will grab on and wrap themselves. You wouldn't need to train them to a trellis. They'll find that trellis and fill it up. There are 4 colors in this. The pretty crimson and the pretty pink are the 2 original pretty groups. These are more aggressive climbers than the new ones. The pretty deep pink, the pretty deep red, they work really nice for a 6-inch trellis, but if you're going something larger, I would still stick with the original pretty crimson. I don't want to confuse anybody by saying original, but I would stick with the pretty crimson and the pretty pink and use the pretty deep pink and the pretty deep red for more 6-inch trellises, or they make great hanging baskets as they actually will cascade over the side.
And so for the northern growers, it sounds like the pretty ones are more forgiving when it gets a little cold out.
Yeah, they'll be a little more forgiving on the cold, and they'll also flower much earlier than the giants, which is huge for up north.
I see, yeah. And then, let's see, last but not least is Garden Crimson with, just 1 color now, but more in the pipeline.
Yeah, and this one's just great. I mean, it branches great. It works great in the landscape, as you can see on the photo. It gets covered in flowers. This is only going to get about 1 foot high, but it will get 2 to 3 feet wide. It can be used as a ground cover in the landscape, and also it makes an amazing hanging basket. Again, it will cascade and trellis over the side. This is a very, very easy one to grow. This is a good place for somebody to start, even in the quart pot. You give it 1 pinch and it fills it out. Very different, very unique for a landscape used Mandevilla. But Garden Crimson is probably one of my favorites. Down in Florida, it's in flower 11 months out of the year.
Wow. And let's see. Now we've got something completely different that's not part of the Sun Parasol brand, but a totally new product named Sundenia.
Yeah, and this is another one that's totally unique. If you take what the pretties are to Sun Parasol, this is like the antithesis of the pretties. You have the Mandevilla characteristics, but a Dipladenia growth habit. So you still get that large Mandevilla flower, but it's going to stay compact. It's going to work great for a bush or a hanging basket. Also will do very well in the landscape.
And these were first shown to the industry at TPIE in January. And,
yep, and they won an award down at TPIE for Best New Flowering Plant. The reaction's been great. The nice thing about this is the new coral color. It almost glows in the sun. Pictures just don't do it justice. It just kind of looks like a pink. But when you see it outside and the sun's hitting it, you have that yellow throat, and then around the yellow throat you have a thin white line before the coral starts, and it's really stunning outside.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard to truly capture that color. I mean, it's like you paint a bright pink on top of red. It's like color under a color, the underpainting almost.
Yeah.
And you're saying to differentiate it from the other Sun Parasol products, it's better to present more as a bush rather than trained to a trellis.
Yeah, and the same as the originals out in California. Could you probably train this to a trellis and make a beautiful plant? Yes, but the ideal use for it is more of a bush.
Okay. Well, that wraps up all the different types of Sun Parasol and the new Sundenia. And now,
Delilah,
yes.
Can I say one more thing? I forgot to mention the day length of flowering.
Okay, yes.
You know, the Garden Crimson is probably going to be the first one in flower at about 10 hours a day length. The pretties and the originals will both come shortly behind that. It's going to be 10.5 to 11 hours, whereas the giants need a solid 12 hours before they're going to flower. So you can always think about that when your market is and what your day length is, but if you have the giants, you're going to need a little more time.
I see.
All right?
Yep. So now that we know all about the different types and how to produce them, now we have to sell them. So now we've got some wonderful marketing resources to promote Sun Parasol that I'm going to cover for the remainder of our presentation. So many of you may know, well, as with the Garden Crimson, you see these really gorgeous, vivid red pots. So in addition to the quartz size for Garden Crimson, we go up to the larger size for Sun Parasol in general. If you really want to drive that impulse sale and drive the brand home, I mean, nothing captures the eye like this beautiful red crimson. And one thing that's been nice in some markets is you can see these 3-pack carriers that we worked with John Henry on that hold 3 of the quartz. So TJ, some of your customers in different markets have used it. I know both Kroger in the south plus independents like Mahoney's in the northeast have had some experience with the 3-packs.
Yeah, anybody that's done the 3-pack has been very successful with it. There's a little more cost going into it, but it's a great presentation. You mentioned Kroger. Kroger had great success, but it's something somebody can walk by, grab, throw it in the cart. They can take it home. With the 3 of them, they can either make a combo container or they could drop it in a hanging basket and have a couple nice hanging baskets fairly quickly.
Yeah, so that's something, you know, we want to bundle the sales. You know, multiple pots is always good. And so in addition to the packaging that I just showed you, Suntory the past several years has invested in digital online resources. The idea is to create a platform that's available to everybody, the entire industry, no matter what part of the supply chain you're in. And we call it YES, your easy Suntory solution. And when you go to suntorycollection.com, we have a special home for YES that shows with different icons, all the tools all in one place that you can find, you know, whether it's POP, you know, designing custom posters and bench cards, you know, whether it's our booklets, our video channel, photo gallery, apps. It's all right here, and now I'm going to cover them one by one. So the photo gallery, for any kind of marketing, especially for plants and flowers, fundamentally you need good pictures. So we've already been investing in photography for our own uses and catalogs. Why not make these pictures available to everybody? So we have an online photo gallery, and it's the place to find images for every Suntory variety, including Sun Parasol. So once you go there and find the pictures you need, you right-click, download, and save. There's no watermarks, preventing you from using it. The resolution is very good. No registration or permissions required. In fact, we won't even know that you were there unless our IT people go into the data. But so it's barrier-free. And but if you need something that's a much higher resolution than what's here, I'm happy to help you personally with that. So here's an example when you go online to the photo gallery, and then I select Sun Parasol, and then I can see, I can see Red Emperor, Pretty Deep Pink, all the different series and colors. And so to show you what's available, I chose Pretty Crimson, and so there's close-ups on the flower, farther up on the plant, or also lifestyle settings, a whole variety of images that you can use all right here. And another thing is, if you just want to print some bench cards to really highlight a promotion or just your regular displays, we have some in the system under Yes. So we have templates for each brand, and you can customize it by you plug in the pot size, your price, and there's an empty white area where you can add your own logo, so it's branded with your garden center or whatever retailer you're selling, or you as the grower. And also there's a QR code that takes the consumer to the mobile site, and then you get extensive information, much more than on the plant tag. So on Yes, you go in the bench card system, you pick out which variety you're going to do. It's not every color, it's every brand. And then same thing with the poster. We don't have a poster for every color, but for each key brand we have it, and you can add your business information. And it's so easy, whether you have the capabilities to print these yourself, or you just go to a local printer or Office Max or Kinko's. It's really easy. I mean, you could print different pricing every week if you wanted to, and you don't have to carry inventory. And so you just print when you'd like to promote the plants you're selling, and the QR codes direct consumers to more information. Okay, and also we have an extensive video channel. So in addition to the SuntoryCollection.com website, which is like a TV guide in itself, it is all hosted on YouTube. So there's nearly 300 to choose from. We have some for the grower, all about production and benefits for the grower, but I'd say 2/3 of it is for the gardener and consumer. There's a video catalog that talks about each key brand, planting care and advice, before and after projects. And one of the fun things we did the past couple of years was we went to a real house, and over the course of a couple of days did some 3-minute demonstrations, projects that any consumer could do on a Saturday afternoon. And then these revolve around parts of the house. So let's say, for my front entryway leading up to my front door, what can I do there? Consumer clicks there, and then there are 4 or 5 videos that present some ideas, whether it's Sun Parasol or one of our other products, back patio, back porch. So that's a real fun way to organize it by the way the consumer thinks. And then in addition to product-specific videos, we have some more general planning and care and troubleshooting from our expert Chris Banton from the UK. So he does a wonderful job, very friendly for the gardener. And so what can I do with these Suntory videos? So as a grower, you could learn the production tips and grower benefits. You can share the videos through social media sites. You can link to content or embed them in your own emails and websites and promotions. Really anything you can do with a video on YouTube, you can do with these. At your garden center, you can run it on a loop, on a DVD, the whole time as a promotion, buy the product. And then, as I mentioned before, the QR codes link to mobile sites. So the mobile sites are different than our normal website because the whole architecture and format is smartphone friendly with the navigation. So you can choose, if you're a grower, you go in and check the production details you need. For the consumer, what do I do with this at home, all the planting and care. And so again, check production details when you need them. Connect to QR codes and signage and tags. So even though our POP generator already does this, anything you're already doing with QR codes, it can go right here. And it's also a good product knowledge and training tool for your employees, and so they can answer your customers' questions with confidence. So there's a wealth of free tools here. And also for iPads, we have a Grower's Guide app that takes, it's like a combination of our catalog and production guide and all the digital resources wrapped into one, all integrated for iPads. So there's complete cultural information for the entire Suntory catalog. You can view crop times and cultural requirements at a glance as well as in depth on each one. And we have some fun apps too, such as the virtual combo designer. This is the second generation of it. People just love it. You just select 3 of the varieties, drag them into the circles, hit enter, and then you see the combination grow together before your eyes. So the new and improved one, you can save what you did, share it. You see a list of the plants you chose. It's a lot more functional and user-friendly, and so we're excited to roll out the new version of the Combo Designer. And actually, the Combo Designer is integrated in a fun new game called Flower Crush. Many of you might have heard of Candy Crush that everybody's hooked on. Well, this isn't quite like that. It's just a fun way to decorate pictures with our flowers. And so you can see a mock-up that I did for fun, and you can adjust. You can make the flowers more life-size instead of giant like I did. You can make a combo and place it. I think it'd be fun to take a picture of the front of your house or your deck and then plan all your plantings right there. What a great tool. And also for the consumer, it's an integrated app that is like an interactive, engaging magazine that's multimedia called Easy Gardening Tips. We have 2 editions. One is for early spring and one is for summer that really focuses on Sun Parasol. Really amazing, engaging, interactive content. Searchable flower finder with a geolocator that promotes local independent garden centers around the user. And that concludes our presentation today. I'm happy to answer any questions for either myself or TJ.
Great, thank you, TJ and Delilah. So we'd now like to open the floor for questions. And if you have a question, please type it into the questions pane at the bottom of the control panel and hit send. So the first question we have coming in is going back to the production tips that we talked about earlier in the webinar. We have a question, are there symptoms of overwatering? We have a grower who's seeing brown petiole on the upper leaf and the browning spreading into the leaf at the base. The vines become dry on the lower leaves. So we're wondering, does it sound like overwatering or maybe something else? Maybe TJ can take that one?
Yeah, I would like to see a photo of it. It's the easiest way to do it, but overwatering, usually what you'll see is you'll start to see leaves yellow, and they'll start to droop a little bit, and it will work its way up the plant usually. The yellowing, you usually start at the bottom and work its way up. You can pull the plant out of it by simply letting the plant dry out completely, but I really would like to see a picture of what he's talking about.
Okay, yeah, we'll connect you. He's offering to send a picture to you, Jay, so you can take a look, so we'll connect you to after the webinar.
Yeah.
So the next question is, what's the best pH range for Mandevillas?
They're not as, if you look at our guide, it says 5.5 to 6, I think, but they're not as touchy on the pH as some might think. We run our pH at about 6.2, I believe, but anything in between 5.5 and 6.7 is fine.
All right. We have a question from a northern grower who asks, is it better to buy in pre-finished or smaller liners for northern growers?
That's a good question. I would always recommend the larger cells. If they have a full greenhouse in December and January and they want to bring them in and they're going to be heating the greenhouse anyways, they can. But you can save yourselves a lot of time and headache by bringing in a larger cell later. Also, you just don't have enough light up north a lot of times in the wintertime. I know a lot of people that bring in 3-inch from us. I know a lot of people that even buy 6-inch out of South Florida and they bring it up. They drop it into hanging baskets, and 4 to 6 weeks later they have some great hanging baskets. It is really tough to grow the liners from a liner form up north. If you don't have a lot of experience with growing Mandevilla, I would definitely start with the larger cell.
All right, thanks. How about another question? How long should the day length be for flowering for Sundenia?
Sundenia falls with like the originals. It's going to be 10.5 hours.
All right. And another question about northern conditions. Which varieties are best suited for northern conditions?
Well, they're all going to be annuals up north. None of them are going to make it through the winter, although we do get a lot of emails and stuff from consumers asking how to overwinter them, and they can be overwintered. But probably the most popular up north are like Garden Crimson or the originals, just because they're in flower so much earlier. But I see so many people up north putting the true Mandevilla next to a mailbox. So maybe you target some of the originals for your earlier spring and some of the giants for a little bit later.
All right, a question from another attendee about fertilizer. Can slow-release fertilizer be detrimental to plants in the north? Sometimes, he says, may not water for 1 to 2 weeks. Can the salt level be raised too much in the winter?
That's a good question. I would like you to connect me with him so I can ask my grower for exact details. With the slow release, something I should mention with Mandevilla is you do not want a slow release that has high urea. The urea will stop the plant from taking up the nutrients for some reason. So with your slow release, you do want very little or no urea, and you'll get much better results. Okay. I don't know about the salt, though. I would like to ask my grower about that.
Yeah, we'll maybe connect you after the webinar, the attendee. Oh, now we have some more questions coming in. Feeding every other day, does that mean every other watering?
Yeah, every other watering. Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's see. Will 1 4-inch pot planted in January be sufficient enough for a 12-inch hanging basket finishing in mid-May?
Yeah, part of it depends where they're at and what temperature they're keeping their greenhouse at, but there should be no reason that you couldn't do a 4-inch to a hanging basket in that amount of time. So yes, to answer your question, yes, 1 4-inch should be fine. We sell a 3-inch, and what I tell people, from our 3-inch, you could finish a 1 gallon in about 6 weeks. If you took 2 of our 3-inch and put it in a 12-inch hanging basket, you could finish in about 8 weeks.
So does that all apply, again, about questioning about northern growers, does that still apply to northern growers in lower light conditions?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
When I talk about the large cell, I mean, people in Florida who have plenty of time, they're going to buy in the small plugs because they have nothing but time and they got a lot of light and a lot of heat. But yes, yes, it does apply.
All right. Here's the question. I'm a bedding plant grower who's never grown Mandevilla before. What advice do you have for me? Should I start with Garden Crimson or another variety?
I would start with Garden Crimson or any of the originals. And, you know, you're going to treat it totally different than an annual. The biggest thing you want to watch is your water. That'll be your biggest test. So as long as you can run it dry and keep it on a separate program from the annuals, you should do just fine.
All right, thanks very much. And that should wrap up our webinar. Thank you all for joining us very much today. And thank you to TJ and Delilah and Suntory Flowers for sharing this information with us. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, TJ.